What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. We have loads to get to today. We're going to talk NBA Finals between the Mavs and the Boston Celtics. It's here. It's coming on Thursday. You're probably listening to this on a Tuesday. We're going to get to the Timberwolves post-mortem, basically, about their future. And then I say we have lots to get to, but that's pretty much it. And then we'll go into some fun stat padding stuff. But Grant, first and foremost, before we get off to the races, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
All right.
Look at you asking how I'm doing. I'm spectacular. I'm caffeinating at the moment at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. But I already made the thumbnail for this podcast. But like that's how on top of my shit I am right now. Because I want to go to bed before 4 a.m. So I have the thumbnail locked and loaded. I just hope that we talk about everyone who's in the thumbnail. I think that we will.
Well, we will have to just readdress that like halfway through and make sure we don't need to mention. I
like living dangerously. Just come on. You guys didn't mention Luka Doncic once. Fuck.
I rest assured. Looking at my notes, we may mention him.
We should start there though with the NBA Finals, right? I feel like that's a pretty big deal. No?
Yeah. Can I start it by asking you a question?
No.
We're gonna try. Oh, that was a question. So I guess we're done.
Yeah.
So this is the way. To me, this is the way into the series. However long or short we want to go on this, ideally pretty short because this will all be stale after game one.
This is the most time we've had to record before a series. Though.
I know. It feels bizarre that it's like, hey, this might actually hold up for 36 hours before it's useless. Who is this series about? Like, what to you? Exclude like if you're in Boston, it's about one thing. If you're in Dallas, it's about another. But if you are just an NBA fan or impartial in any way, like who or what, you could say it's a what is the series about?
Man, I don't know if I've given that enough thought. I normally gravitate towards which team not has more at stake, but what does the series, regardless of outcome, become more about? I think we end up talking more about the Mavericks just because if the Celtics lose, it'll be DEFCON 1 because it's championship or bust, which I don't love painting it in those terms in general for them. Them not making it out of the East would have been a disaster. They did it. They lost twice. That's like anyone who wants them to do something nuclear because if they lose in the finals would be mistaken, and to put it kindly. And I think with the Mavericks, what's interesting is so either you lose and you were still ahead of schedule relative to your roster, and that includes what you did at the deadline. Everyone could, and they've called you and I out for what we wrote and said about them. We welcomed it. We were wrong. If you want to continue to do that, I want you to show me where you said with actual reason that the Mavericks were going to go to the NBA Finals after the trade deadline. So even if they lose, they're ahead of schedule. But if they win, it's kind of just like, don't you think that there'll be more ramifications or ripple effects throughout the entire league? You start talking about where Luka Doncic ranks among kind of all-time greats. He'll get that bump where it's, oh, he did this. We already know he was a postseason killer, but he did this. So he just might be right at the top of the MVP discussion next year by default. Then sort of the other thing is you look at the way they built their roster and the type of talent they have in the front court. Do we see teams try to mirror image that? And then the bigger thing to me would be, this is a team that turned over a good amount of its road. Like we're talking about, they acquired, what would you say, 2 of their top 6 players at the trade deadline, at least 2 of their top 7.
And drafted one of the other ones less than a year ago.
Right. Do we see teams willing to take more chances in the draft and actually play these guys when they're supposed to be good? Or even more importantly, do we see teams kind of have this renewed utility in the trade deadline? Because where I think it's been for a few years, and it makes sense, is that these massive moves, for the most part, they will happen early in the season because there's a trade demand, or a team like the Raptors finally gets clarity and is like, okay, we'll trade Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby fairly well before the trade deadline. Or it's all about like sort of futzing and fiddling and finishing touches and odds and ends at the trade deadline. Like that's what the actual good teams seem to be looking for. Like the seismic moves tend to happen over the offseason, and the Mavs did something in between. And so does that kind of reinforce the importance or the utility of making moves at the trade deadline? So I feel like this series winds up being more about the Mavericks in some. What was were you thinking something different?
I kind of, it's easy to look at the Celtics first, and the championship or bustness of it all is definitely like what you'll hear a lot of talk about, especially say they lose game one or something, and then it's just like you start having to think about the referendums on Tatum and on the team itself, and like, well, if it's not good enough now, like it's already getting crazy expensive, all this stuff. Like that's all there for sure, and that's part of it. And if you're in Boston, that's why I tried to like create the impartial perspective. Like if you're in Boston, that's all that's all you're thinking about. You don't care about what I think and what you mentioned this series is really about. It's just narratively like this is the Luka Doncic moment, like, or the first opportunity he's had to really do all the things you mentioned. And in my notes, I have the exact things like this. If they win this title against this Boston team, which like spare me the easy road stuff. They won 64 games. They were plus double digits net rating during the year. Like, and not only, they got lucky in terms of the injuries of the teams they faced, but like they killed those, they ran roughshod into the finals. It was easy. I don't care. This is still like a great team just based on the numbers. So if Luka beats this team, we'll immediately start talking about like is it Jokic or Luka? Like those will be the arguments we have of like who's the best player alive. And a lot of people are going to say Luka because of recency bias and because of like he's just kind of different. I don't know. There's something about him that maybe it's because he's not a big and he like kind of scratches the itch that we're all much more comfortable with of like a wing or a guard being the most dominant player. Center is weird to us. So no, I think it's Luka, and just sort of like, I know this isn't what we tend to traffic in, but like the legacy defining, like legacy starting moment. It's whatever Jordan's first title, whatever you want to, how nuts you want to go. Like that's this kind of stuff we'll have to talk about. And then within that, like, I think narratively it's about Luka, but also tactically, this whole series is about Luka, like from both sides of just like, what's Boston? That's kind of, we won't go too deep, but like, that's what I'm most interested to talk about is like, what's Boston do? Like what should it try? What has it, I have some numbers that I think are pretty interesting, but like everything circles back to Luka for me. And it, maybe that's just like we focus on stars and that's how it works. But I think that really is where the meat of the series is. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you're.
No, I agree with you. I'd actually like to get into that to like kind of start talking about the actual basketball aspect. But I want to ask you really quickly, and this is not something we normally traffic in, but because we're on the subject matter of it,
traffic in it.
Who does an NBA Finals victory do more for, Luka or Tatum?
Okay, that's a great question, and this is why I prefaced it with like, well, but what about Boston? I think it does more for Tatum than it does for Luka, because I think people will assume Luka will just be back. Tatum has already been here once and been in late series several times. I think for him, well, interestingly, if Tatum, unless Tatum just crushes it, but even then, we won't start next year thinking like, is Tatum the best player in the world or is Nikola Jokic? Like that's not going to happen. I do think it just like it ticks a box for him that a lot has bothered a lot of people that it's been unticked to this point, which is ridiculous because as you know, he's 19. But for Luka, I think it's like no one's going to view this as like people will view this as the first of many opportunities. I don't know if Tatum gets that same grace just because he's won so much already. You're acting like you think it's Luka that it does more for.
Right. And it's just, I mean, Tatum is, we make the joke about him being 19, but we're just going to assume that Luka's going to be back while playing in the more difficult conference and basically being the same age. They're 25 and Tatum's now 26. And I just think I have less faith. I think so this is where we diverge the most, is I have less faith in people ticking those boxes that you say are unticked right now if Tatum wins. I think they're going to look at it and say, Boston built one of the most dominant cores 1 through 6 that we've seen. This is the level of talent is different at the top, but like when's the last team that looked this good 1 through 6? I guess you could say it was last year's Denver Nuggets if you want. Like that's okay, great. And so also the thing with that it does more for Luka is it cements his status in a conversation to which you already said Jayson Tatum does not belong.
Right.
And so to elevate yourself to all of a sudden go from, maybe we'll talk about Tatum. I doubt it'll be this, but is he the best where it's kind of like, oh, you're not good enough to be the best player in the NBA, but are you the best two-way player? Is it you or Anthony Edwards in the NBA? So maybe he'll get like that attaboy. type thing.
Yeah.
With Luka, you already mentioned it. It becomes Luka versus Jokic, and not a discussion that I want to have at this moment. You could get into I honestly think it's a discussion as to who's more valuable on offense when you're looking at the way teams game plan around. But with all that said, I think you also look at it, and the bigger thing for me is I keep coming back to Boston was supposed to be here, not just because people were saying championship or bust, but because of the things I just mentioned of how just good they are 1-6. And then with the Mavericks, who would be, not that the Mavericks were bad, like who is the last team that you can say won a title and was so unexpected to win a title? Was it I know it changed as the season went on, and with Dallas, it's kind of different because I don't think anyone was picking them leading them into the season. And I think even fewer people would have picked them around the trade deadline. But is it the 2015 Warriors?
I mean, well, they're so different than Dallas though, because they were just crushing everybody from the jump,
Yeah, but it's coming into the season, no one was like,
yeah.
oh, this team is going to become X. I guess you could say the 2019 Raptors, but
that's the first one that came to mind.
All right, I think that's fair.
Just because of the the Gasol shows up and
Great point.
Who else I forget. Just the
Kawhi trade before the season.
Yeah, right. That's a good. Yeah, the Irving trade was the timing is not the same as the Kawhi one, but it's kind of new guy. Let's see how it goes. I think that's pretty close. But even then, I mean, but it's even that I think that's a great point. If this Mavs team is really unusual for a lot of reasons, because it's not if Luka is in the Kawhi role, Kawhi already had a Finals MVP. It's not
right.
He's not. It's not like he was proving. I think people viewed Kawhi differently after that title, because then he really had the clamps on the best two-way guy thing, and who's actually the best player. He was that guy for a minute there. But he was a little more established in terms of big stage winning. But yeah, I think it's probably that. There's probably someone screaming at us right now that we're missing an obvious one. No,
I think 2019 was pretty recent. It's not.
Yeah.
Would you say the Warriors winning in 2022? It's no, come on.
That's a little different. But I mean, that was pretty unexpected. I mean, they expected it, I think, but I don't think anybody else really did until it was almost done. It was this is really going to happen. That was a hard one to foresee. I think, yeah. I guess what I mean about saying it changes more for Tatum, it has more to do with I think now I'm more convinced that Luka just is the guy. And it's almost well, if it doesn't prove something about him now, he just feels this could be prisoner of the moment stuff. We're definitely subject to that. See our Nuggets and Wolves evaluations throughout the postseason. But I just think he's gonna get there. At some point, Luka's gonna end up, regarded as whatever, the best of this generation or something close to it. And whether he wins this title or not, because I think he'll get another one, or the numbers will be so undeniable. But Tatum, it's kind of getting a title at least even so when you're saying, yeah, I mean, he's not a top 5 guy, or whatever, but then you have to go, but he was Finals MVP for one of the best teams we've ever seen. That, it'll give you a butt for Tatum.
There's also, even though the Mavericks are here, there is an element of combustibility to this, because I just don't have faith that, because it's the West, this doesn't really have much to do with the Mavericks, is the fact that the West is just fucking wild. I don't think they can guarantee they'll be back here.
No.
And then if you lose, you get into, when you're talking about Luka's next contract, I'm not framing this as Luka's going to leave. I think that the Mavs have bought plenty of goodwill. And even if things don't go according to plan next season, should they lose here, I think they've built up enough goodwill with him, it seems. The vibes are so good right now. Less is guaranteed to me in the West. And I know the Celtics, they have the second apron stuff, but I just feel like Boston long-term is less combustible, regardless of what the end result here is, than Dallas was being. That's why I would say I think it does more for Luka and the Mavericks organization at large too. Just I think it buys them a level of stability. I'm not just talking for the next 2 years, but maybe the next 5 to 7 that they're not going to get if they lose.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to talk just loosely about, what we're looking for? What are the points of interest are in terms of on the floor for this series?
Yeah. I think we have to start with Luka, as you said, how you think they're going to defend.
So I just looking at and everybody should go read John Schumann on NBA.com, has a bunch of numbers, just breakdowns that really, I think, clarify kind of the crux of what what may decide this title here. And it's just got it is all about Luka. It is all about how this really good Celtics defense guards him. And it's amazing that so like the Celtics want to switch. Like that is their default setting, and they have plenty of guys to do that. They're probably better equipped to do that than anybody. And some of the numbers that were really striking to me, and I'm gonna have to dig them all out of here, is that so let's break it down this way. When Luka gets switched against in the playoffs, he's getting you 1.23 points per possession, or which is like that'll work in the half court.
That's just good enough, right? Yeah.
If you blitz him, that number is 1.01, which is like,
Oh wow,
that's a win. If you do like a soft double or like bring the center up to the level, like basically how the Nuggets use Jokic a lot of times in pick and roll defense, 1.21. So the numbers say blitz basically. Boston does not do that. Like that, that's not what they want to do. And I think one of the most interesting points I saw was from Tim Cato. It was on a podcast with Vince Goodwill. Was talking about how like, and Tim Cato knows the Mavs better than you, me, or most people. Writes for The Athletic for anyone for some reason who doesn't know that. Was saying that like it'll be fascinating to see if Boston wants to force Luka to isolate, so switching all the time throughout the series, in the hopes that he will fatigue, which is like that is a way to beat Luka, or it has been in the past. Like if you just force him to have an absurd usage, don't let him get off the ball, don't force him off the ball, he might get tired by like game 4 or 5. The thing is, you might be down 3-1 by that point if you do that. And Tim Cato's point was like, but then you have to stick with this strategy that you're probably getting killed from all corners for continuing to go with. Like it's a real like, 3 steps ahead kind of thinking. But like the Celtics do just have to decide, like, do we let Luka isolate? Do we help off of shooters in the corners, which Boston does not do? Boston likes to play the pick and roll with 2 guys. This is all from John Schumann. Like I don't profess to be an expert. So like the Celtics are either gonna have to go with the thing they like to do and give up 1.23 points per 100 points per possession in the half court, which is going to get you beat, or they have to change a lot and hope that doesn't like, because the only thing worse than getting beat like with your preferred style is getting beat with one that you switch to too soon and then you lose like not on your terms. So I think that whole interplay is really the most interesting aspect of it to me. That's a lot to go on, but like I'm fascinated by what do you do with Luka? What is this great defense with a bunch of guys you can throw at him do? Like, do they do the things they want to, the things they have to, the things they don't want to? There's a lot to kind of unpack.
Yeah. What do you think they're going to end up doing? Because I actually don't think that they need to be. I mean, I think there'll be points, and if they're going to leave someone, I think they're going to help off of Derrick Jones Jr. I think that's the guy that he's shooting 39%, 40% from 3 in the playoffs, but it's on like 3 attempts a game. They'll live if that's the type of volume he's going to shoot. Like they'll live with it. But what I'm sort of the interplay is it's not even just the way they're defending him, but okay, well, who's the primary defender on him? So if you are going to switch, because I've tried to give this a lot of thought, and I know there's 2 different schools of thought. It's we'll just put the best guy that you think is like for like to go against Luka on Luka. And I think if in a vacuum, the best person they have to defend Luka is probably Drew Holiday. I think that's the guy that you would prefer. And so it'd be just throw Drew Holiday on Luka. Like he's handled assignments that are that big before. He's strong. He can do it.
He's the guy they've thrown at Kevin Durant before. Like whoever you've needed Drew Holiday to guard, he goes and gets that guy.
But there's the other school of thought where it's, well, you know what? You put, and we saw the Timberwolves do this at one point, was no, you put that guy on Kyrie. And it's just like, deal with limiting Kyrie because Luka's going to figure out a way to get his or figure out a way to get shots for everybody else regardless. The other thing that you could do, and I think Boston did a little bit of that this year during the regular season, and you could throw, I want to make this clear. They could have played each other 10 times during the regular season, and I just won't assign much value to it. Yeah. Only one of their games came after the trade deadline. And I think they were both relatively at full strength. What you could do, and what I actually like the idea of doing, is and you use the word interplay of, you could put Drew Holiday on Kyrie and maybe use Derek White to come off of Derrick Jones Jr. if you want to do something like that, or maybe even Tatum just because of the size. But like, why not throw Jaylen Brown as your primary defender on Luka. That's the guy that he has size a little bit more than he's not necessarily as strong as Drew Holiday. But then if you want to, if you want Luka to mismatch hunt or you want someone to screen, it's well, why don't we have Drew Holiday guarding Daniel Gafford essentially? It's like if we're gonna switch, well, then we'll just get the matchup that everyone would want us to have anyway. Or maybe it's Derek White in that case if you want to throw Drew on Kyrie and say, here, go do that. So I'm very interested to see how Boston goes back, because I really do expect them, especially with him coming back from, and that's another element of this series, is Kristaps Porzingis is, by the way, this was from the Locked On Mavs podcast. Shout out Nick Angstad. Not something I realized, but you definitely know it without thinking about it. He's never been to a conference finals, never played in a conference finals, but he's about to play in the NBA finals, which is just hysterical. He was injured.
Skipping steps out here.
Right. So, like they're not gonna have him like do a lot of the stuff on defense we've seen with other bigs do. Like I don't think he's the guy they're gonna use to blitz Luka, especially coming off this soleus injury. Yeah. I think it was the right calf. So if you're gonna be dead set on him kind of just, even if it's not like being tethered to around the basket, like in that general area, then you are like like Derek Jones Jr. is probably maybe PJ Washington, depending on the night or something, like whatever guy you think is gonna do that. So I think that's going to be their base, that they're not going to move away from it all. And then maybe they'll kind of futz and fiddle from there. I'm curious what you think is the best approach, or what do you think they end up? One, very quickly, I think we're going to see them try a ton of different shit.
I think that
there's stuff that Joe Mazzulla will just bust out of the bag that maybe we don't see coming, or he'll vary it up to try and keep Luka off kilter. A lot of people are like, just go with the one thing you think is going to work, or the one thing that's working. And the thing that might work is diversity there. But what do you think is the best approach, or their most likely approach to it?
So I agree that the regular season is not, especially between teams that played twice, only one of which had a whole lot of value. What I would expect them to do is what the numbers said they did most of during the year, which is Jaylen Brown is the primary defender. And then Jayson Tatum spends most of his time on the center. So like, which is in fact what happened this year. I guess Jayson Tatum's primary assignment was Derek Lively more frequently than anyone else when they played the Mavs. So when Lively is upsetting the screen, it's just Brown and Tatum switch. Like that's it. Now, of course, like if Porzingis is in the game, he's going to be in a drop. Like that is the defense you play with Porzingis on the floor. You can't bring him up to the level you'll get picked apart. So he has to drop. So then it becomes like, how much pre-switching can Boston do to keep Porzingis or Horford, for example, because they'll go at Horford too, being the guy guarding the screen. Like they're going to try to pull, they being Dallas and Luka, are going to try to pull the bigs up into the screen as often as possible, just because then it's like, at least if you're switching, that's a pretty significant mismatch. And if it's Porzingis, it's like, green light for Luka, right? Because there's no rim protection anymore and he's got a big on him. So I think I would guess it'll be Brown. I would guess it'll be Tatum, like finagling his way into guarding the screen setter as much as Boston can get away with that. But then, like, especially when Porzingis is in a drop, I think you're right. Like, well, then surely it's just Derek Jones and PJ Washington getting corner threes. Like, and I think, don't you feel like Boston would be like okay with the theory of, if the Mavs are going to beat us and win the title, it'll be because Derek Jones and PJ Washington like shot us to death from the corners? I feel like you could be, but by the way, Boston has allowed 1.5 3-point makes from the corners per game in the playoffs. 1.5. So like that's by far the fewest. So they don't leave those guys. But I think against Luka, this is what I'm talking about. Like you're almost going to have to, and just say, please beat us. I that's what I would expect to see. But I agree. Like I think if you show Luka the same thing for a quarter, like you need to pivot after that, or like, just because if you don't show him different looks, I just don't see a way where he fails to figure it out. So yeah, I don't know. Did you want to respond to that? Because I have another like kind of rhetorical question.
I think I don't want to say it's a mystery, but I think it's Boston's well equipped to try all these different things. I'm just curious to see what ends up working the best, because there's also some of the concessions you might make is, so you mentioned that Boston's only allowing 1.5 makes from the corners. Dallas, 13% of its entire shot attempts during the playoffs are coming from the corners, which leads the playoffs.
They make the most corner threes among playoff teams. So you've got the least allowed and the most made clashing now.
And it's just like when you look at teams that made it deep into the playoffs for the most part, like it's not even close on the corner three stuff. And so if Boston takes that away like they're supposed to, are you just then conceding that, well, Luka might be able to cook us from inside the arc? And if he shoots 55, 60, 65% from twos, we're okay with that? And like, I guess your approach will change depending on the big you have on the floor, because Al Horford's interesting. The big thing about Porzingis coming back, by the way, too, is now it's an Al Horford as your backup rather than like, all right, this is Al Horford and Luke Cornett show and maybe some Xavier Tillman sprinkled in. The issue, I'll say persisting issue, because it's not a new one, is, well, how many minutes is Porzingis going to play? Like, what does he look like? How many minutes can he handle in the series? Because even look, if he gives you 15, it's better, because then it's less of your third and fourth string big that you're going to see, which is huge.
You maybe don't have to see Cornette at all if he can give you those 15 minutes.
Ooh, yeah. Then you're playing Al Horford 33.
Well, I mean, Cornette this is not the series for Cornette, I don't think.
Well, but what's interesting with Al Horford, though, is that I still don't know if we fully appreciate how mobile this dude still is at age 80.
Amazing.
But what's the issue? Like, so if Luka or Kyrie is looking to get downhill and he finds himself in those situations, that becomes an asset. But like, if they're not going downhill, it's not weird. It's just, he feels like, this is anecdotally, I don't have numbers to back this up, but it feels like he struggles more against the guys who are going to be able to hit those step back threes, like almost going south rather than north. Like you go east, west, he's fine. You try and go drive downhill, go south, still fine. But like you go north, whatever that direction would be considered, like you do this, like those are the stuff that he's not going to be able to shoot those gaps on closeout as quickly, because he's still trying to leave some space to make sure that he doesn't get blown by or can keep pace with or contest shots that are going to be right in front of him. I think that's the matchup that they will probably look to attack. I mean, they're going to go after Porzingis too. Just one that's, I guess, their offensive bread and butter, but you have this guy coming back from an injury. I'm just really interested to see like which big they fare better against, or how they go about trying to either involve these bigs in the action or like just go about attacking them. And we've seen them do it time and again. I just don't have a great answer for what they're going to do. And this leads me to, unless you have any other thoughts on Boston's defense, back to Dallas's defense, because they have not faced like in full. I know Karl-Anthony Towns was in the last series, but like when you go from the thing that I don't think people talk about enough with Karl-Anthony Towns is you functionally change the advantage he gives you on offense when you move him from the 5 to the 4. He is still a very good offensive player, but the stuff that makes him unique is most unique and valuable at the 5 on offense. Right. So Dallas has not faced I would say a true high volume team that has a stretch 5, which in the playoffs yet, which Boston, like that is just their default. Unless oddly enough, unless it's Luke Cornett that's playing, who just doesn't take threes anymore, apparently. So I'm very curious. How do you think that if it's Derek Lively, I think they'll be okay, but that's still something that Boston could look to attack. I don't trust Daniel Gafford in those situations. And we kind of did see it against Minnesota in the game that Lively missed, where it's, if you bring him out too far, like you might be a little fucked.
Yeah. He loses his powers the farther he gets from the restricted area, basically. So my rhetorical question was going to be like, isn't it weird that Boston had the best offense in the league this year, and we still are like, it's make or miss for them. Like it depends on if the threes fall, right? Like, isn't that, I know that's not, we're not saying that, but that feels like the reductive way that people think about the Celtics of like, well, they're going to shoot more threes than you, and chances are they'll make more. But if they don't, they just don't score in the paint. Even though they're super efficient there, they just don't get baskets other ways. And then we like slide down the hill into the like mud pit of like, what's wrong with Boston's offense when it bogs down? And like, why can't, that we've talked about a million times. I think offensively for Boston, there is an element of like, are the threes falling? That is a bigger part of their success or failure than I'm comfortable with. Like, if it gives me a little bit of pause, like if you imagine a scenario where Dallas wins this series, I guarantee it features like multiple fourth quarters where Boston just doesn't score and it's missing jumpers. But like, to your point, Dallas has not seen a group like this, because like the thing about the Celtics offense is they will just be 5 out basically all the time. And almost everybody on the floor can run the offense. And now running the offense might mean swing, 5 dribbles, someone shoots a 3, but like you can initiate it from anywhere, which means you can attack, you can target whoever you want to target. So if it's Kyrie you want to go at, like I guess that's Drew Holiday. Okay, you can start the offense, Drew. Like then that's fine. If it's Gafford that you want to pull out, like easy enough. He's gonna have to guard a center that's gonna shoot threes anyway. So like I think Boston has more like spots to pick at, I think, than Dallas does when you're looking for like how are they going to score. But at the same time, Boston is the type of team where it's just like I don't know, like what does picking at a weakness mean because of the types of shots that Boston's offense tends to favor. So it's just interesting to me that like the Celtics had the best offense in the league and have all these advantages, and yet like it does feel like it comes down to the make or miss a little bit more so for them than with Dallas, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, especially because like they're not a team. I think when you look at them on paper, you could see a pathway like, okay, well, why this volume isn't higher? They're 18th during the postseason in transition frequency. And so when you're that reliant on the half, like even Dallas is going to get out in transition
Yeah.
more than
Luka's the
that.
quarterback now. Did you hear? He throws outlet passes. He will
Right.
run.
So and I'm wondering if that makes them, I would think, functionally easier to defend if you're Dallas, because I mean, the key for Dallas is like, okay, you need to do, I think they're 11th in defensive rebounding rate during the playoffs, which just like, you want to be better just because that's going to, end possession so that you can get into your offense. But I'm wondering if a key for them is like, well, let's continue to limit like this volume that Boston is spending in transition, because you're talking about this make or miss stuff. When they get in the half court, they just go through these stretches where it feels like they bog down. And sometimes, look, that's going to end up working out for them. But the percentage of their shots that are coming very late in the shot clock are above average for the playoffs. And like when you get into the fourth quarter specifically, like you see that number kind of skyrocket, and you're seeing the percentages skyrocket. Like Boston shooting 24% from three in the fourth quarter in the final 4 seconds of the shot clock. And like, no, you're not going to defend them for a full 20 seconds on every single possession. But like when you're watching them, it feels like and I'm wondering if that does help Dallas, because of the way they're defending, are they going to be not intimidated, but impacted enough by the Lively and the Gafford minutes to where they're just possessions where it feels like they don't get below the free throw line until if they even try to get inside the 3-point line. And are they going to be even like more reserved and more reliant on, and they're taking like, I think 44% of their shots are coming from three in the playoffs. So are they going to be even more reliant on that because of the way that Dallas defends, or are they going to bend Dallas's defense to the point of breaking because Dallas can't defend, in theory, conceptually, the way that it's been defending for most of this postseason? That's like a very sort of interesting subplot here. And if you're Dallas then, and you can't defend the way that you want to, does this become a Maxi Kleber series to where like, well, now we want to play 5 out, and that gets you away from a lot of what's been most effective.
Yeah.
But I am curious if that's not, if they're if what you're able to do defensively, or what you've done so successfully defensively to this point isn't working, do you try and pull that out of the hat? Because then you're, will Maxi Kleber shoot enough threes or make enough threes for it to matter? Maybe not in a vacuum, but just the idea that you have to guard him, that's going to open things up then for Luka or Kyrie, who in theory, even if Boston is not blitzing them, like it's just going to be harder to get by this Celtics defense because of when you look at all 4 of their perimeter defenders are above average defenders. Like there's not their weak link on defense is like Kristaps Porzingis or the center, which is such a wild thing to like consider a weak link, because it's not actually a weak link.
That's how you win 64 games, is you like really don't have one, basically. Do you want to make a pick? I have 2 stats here though that apologies to wherever these came from, I can't remember. I was agonizing over who to pick. I have made a pick, but before we reveal them, here's a couple stats about like who tends to win championships. So teams with 8 more wins than the opposition in the finals, which is definitely the case this year. It's 50-64. So Boston has 14 more wins, are 30-5 against so it's like when the win gap is that big, it's decisive. The other one that I was blown away by was every champion except for one in the last 44 years was a top 3 seed and won 52 games. Dallas is neither of those things. Now, we talked about how this is a different team after the trades, but it's like, if Dallas wins this, it is going to be a historic win for a lot of reasons, and just highly, highly improbable based on past precedent. So, who are you picking?
So, well, I'll tell you the odds just to see
Okay.
if you're shocked by them at all. Boston's a minus 220 favorite to Dallas being a plus 184.
That's
Does
like,
that like seem kind of square with where you're at with the impression of it? Because it's weird where I think Boston is going to win. They're my pick, but I very much struggled to figure out, okay, how many games is
yeah.
this thing gonna last?
I was really struggling between Dallas in 6 and Boston in 7, and I ultimately went Boston in 7. Um, just because, like, well, I don't know. The fact that I was gonna pick, I really could have picked either team. I don't. That tells you how like close I think potentially this is. I just in picking Boston, I think it's the right pick, but like there's such an obvious scenario where Luka is just unsolvable, and it's clear in like game 2 that Boston has nothing for him, and that this is like a 5 or 6 game series, and Dallas wins it. Like that's 100% on the table. I just trust in the full body of work, the like lack of weaknesses, and you know the depth. And it's just I think Boston should be the pick, but man, that's so scary because Luka just looks like he's that guy, and especially he's had all this time off for whatever injuries he's got, the knee, the ankle, to maybe be a little bit better. Because that's the other thing is like nobody could shut up about how banged up he was while he's just running over the best defense in the league all year.
Yeah, and his efficiency improved in that series. Like he was not shooting well on his off the dribble jumpers, and all of a sudden those start going in more consistently in that series. I'm gonna go. I think I'll go Boston in 7 like you. It would be Boston in 6 for me if it wasn't. But I feel like I fell into that trap last series with the Timberwolves where I'm not accounting for the Luka effect and how much of your defense he's able to manipulate, and that it doesn't not that it doesn't matter, but all right, awesome. You have 5 good defenders on the court at all times,
Yeah.
but he can put you in a state to where that matters nowhere near as much as it should.
If you knew Porzingis was going to be like basically a non-factor, like either not healthy enough or re-injures himself or whatever, would you pick Dallas? Like how much of your pick depends on Porzingis actually not only mattering but like being a real weapon?
Honestly, I think here's why I'm going to say that it doesn't matter as much to me. I think there's a chance. Well, there's not a chance. They're more versatile with Al Horford at center.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably better with Porzingis because of just like that base rim protection and of course that size. Does this feel like a series where it's like, oh, Jayson Tatum or the de facto there's no big on the court type deal from Boston to where if Porzingis isn't working or you don't want to have to put one of the third or fourth, but Xavier Tillman or Luke Cornett in the game, like who is the big that you would fear? I mean, like you were saying, Jayson Tatum's going to be on the big anyway. So at that point, like, why not just cut out the middleman here? And I guess you're worried about the rim protection in that case, but like you just have Derek White just come in for that highlight block off the help. Like
Yeah. I think, I mean, it's hard for me to say this because I picked Boston in 7, which means I think the margin is about as slim as it can be. But I think if Porzingis is not a factor, Boston can still absolutely win it. I would feel really nervous only because I feel like to beat a team that's playing as well as Dallas is, you kind of need all your shit. And like Porzingis can give, we've talked all year about like he's like the way out of Boston's offensive problems a lot of times because you dump it to him on a small guy. Like, and that's just the only changeup they ever really throw. If you don't have that, and like Kyrie is someone they could definitely use that against if Josh Green's on the floor, if Jaden Hardy plays. There's a lot of guys on Dallas's roster that you could attack that way. But I mean, like I would say too, if Porzingis looks really good, then you might be talking about Boston in 5 or 6, hypothetically. But I think Boston has enough either way. It's just like that's another scary element of it is in addition to Luka just being who he is, like Porzingis mattered a lot all year, and just to say that they could do it without him feels a little iffy to me.
I don't, does it feel like, and they've had some like turnover struggles at points, Dallas does, and Boston has the more efficient offense for the playoffs. But because of Luka, it feels like they have the steadier equilibrium or the
Right.
higher floor
Yeah.
on offense than Boston will. And that might be too make or miss here, but it's really more about, okay, the the net sum of their playmaking, their actual shot making and shot creation, like the types of shots it's not just make or miss. It's decision making for Boston.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we talked about when we were talking about Jayson Tatum in the previous podcast, was just like he can be infuriating and this offense can be infuriating because it feels like it has the tools to bust up pretty much any defense. And when they do things wrong, not just if they miss, they miss. If they're missing wide open threes, jumpers, missing at the rim, they miss. But
Mhm.
when they're taking shots that frustrate you, it feels more like an active choice. I would say
Yeah.
90% of the time that it's holy fuck, look at what the defense just did to Boston's offense.
Mhm. Well, that paired with or contrasted against Luka getting whatever shot is the best shot based on the circumstances in front of him consistently. Like that's such a different that's what you're talking about. Like the baseline is just higher because if it's the lob, it's the lob. If it's the skip to the corner, it's the skip to the corner. If it's the pull up from 12 feet with the guy on his back, he'll just get you whatever shot the defense like is telling you need to get. He like got it processed, no problem. Initiate, like find pass, find bucket. Whereas Boston is just like that processing isn't there, it feels like. So, I mean, the way the Celtics could turn this into like a make or miss thing for both sides is blitzing Luka. And because then that's when you get into like someone else is making the decisions, someone else is shooting those like someone's shooting corner threes probably. So like if you really want to get nuts, like and you're Boston, you could introduce variance that way and like at least make it so Dallas isn't just like a good shot creating machine because you're letting Luka see the floor.
The other thing though is like, does this just become the type because of how good Luka is at like the Boston can do things to prevent Dallas from being able to attack one person, but if they're able to get Porzingis involved in the actions or Horford, or if it's can this even be a Peyton Pritchard series if Dallas is able to go? Because I think a lot of it comes down to it's like, well, you can put Peyton Pritchard on Derek Jones Jr. Do you really want him setting screens? And it's like, I guess if it like gives you the opportunity to maybe go at Peyton Pritchard, then yeah,
Mhm.
you absolutely would. And so it almost feels like, couldn't Dallas take a few of Boston's clubs out of its belt? I'm not saying that Peyton Pritchard's a swing piece in this series, but Dallas, I feel like, is going to make Boston's rotation, like make Joe Mazzulla think more
Yeah.
about his rotations.
Yeah. I think Cornette is an example of like, I just don't know if you can play him because he can only play drop. He has to play a deep drop, and Luka is just going to feast on that. So yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I don't know. Celtics in 7, don't feel good about it. Really excited to
Same.
see it. But
I hope we
yeah,
get 7, and I hope it's
me
like a
too.
close 7-game set.
Mhm.
And very quickly, what's more likely? Uh, like a jawing match or just a kerfuffle between Kristaps Porzingis and Luka Doncic, or Kyrie Irving and a Boston fan?
Oh,
So I don't. By the way, I don't think some of the roster has been turned over. It doesn't really seem like anyone who's on the Celtics, like a Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum, has any animosity towards Kyrie Irving.
no, I don't think so either. I'm gonna say I
Do it.
like
I
the
know what you want to say. Say it.
Luka
Yeah.
Porzingis jawing. I think I like that. I like the odds for that
They
pretty good.
just never seemed to really. It was kind of just like the biting your lip thing, where they never seemed to like each other, but it wasn't
Yeah,
super duper like
yeah.
public about it.
I think that's right. Should we talk Wolves now? So should we talk about a team that isn't playing anymore?
Yeah, where do the Wolves go from here, Mister
I
Grant?
I think you trade everybody because it's too expensive, and you just got to get back.
Whoa! Did you know that they're going to be a second apron team? Did you know?
I hadn't heard. I hadn't heard. Yeah, no, like what? So it's always funny to see how people are trying to like break it down to like emphasize how expensive this team has become. Where it's like the numbers like 135 million between Cat and Ant and Gobert, and then if you add McDaniel's, you're over the cap right there with 4 guys, and Conley gets you up to the first 8 of the tax. Or it's
They,
just like okay, the one that is compelling to me is you're at about 196 million with all the guys that you expect to have back. That doesn't include Kyle Anderson or Monte Morris. So like you're second aproning no matter what. And it doesn't include their first round pick, which they have for now. I don't know if that's going to stay that way, but like it is what it is. Like, and then we've talked a lot about how it's urgent, but it's not like capital U urgent because they can get under the second apron by the end of next year. Right. Like that's so I don't know. I don't think we need to, unless you want to go into like who should they trade and why and what are the
no,
fallbacks. Cause
well,
like you just don't have to do it yet.
No, you don't. And then the other thing is you just made it to the conference finals
Yeah.
by beating the reigning champ. And this is the time where you make the moves on the margins. And here's also the issue where if you want to get out of this, and it's not even the way, and what's really true, first of all, we haven't even talked about this. Who the fuck is controlling this team?
Well,
Like
yeah.
that's the big question. I know Glenn Taylor did a good job of painting himself as the hero at one point. I just don't trust either of these two sides to commit to paying the second apron long term. But for next season specifically, if you make a move before before the season starts, like you haven't gotten to the trade deadline and you see you're underachieving and it's we're going to cut costs. That person, whoever's, if it's A-Rod and Mark Laurie, if it's fucking Glenn Taylor, I don't fucking care. Fire them into the sun because then you shouldn't be in a position to own an NBA team if you're not going to stomach it for even a season or a half season just to see where you're at.
Right. For this team specifically, like, you don't pay like, I get it if, I don't know, Utah doesn't want to pay the tax or whatever, just like because of where they are.
Like the Hawks being self-aware. It's that, but they lie to you and say they will pay the tax and then they don't. But it's like the Hawks are not good enough. They're competitive, but they're not good enough to where, no, we don't really want to start the tax clock. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, right. And it's different now, but not only, it would be different if this weren't the Wolves and it was just a team that beat the defending champs and made the conference finals and like, kind of got it handed to them a little bit, but like, all you can do when you're building a team is make it good enough to get that far. And then it's just kind of a little bit of luck and a little bit like, if we always talk about like, oh, you're trying to win a championship, it's like you're really trying to make the conference finals. Because if you can get that far, you're really, really good and you had a puncher's chance, and that's the best thing you could possibly hope for. Like, you don't, like, the 64 win Celtics are the outlier. You can't just, like, that can't be the goal, right? So like, if it were just that, you really can't make a cost-cutting move. But because it's Minnesota, who never gets here, you really can't make the cost-cutting move. You like that, it's even more egregious if you use cheapness to like break this team up than it would be for almost any other franchise.
Yes, because the bar for success was lower and they blew past that bar and into a bar that would have been, if the Nuggets reached the conference finals, you would be sitting here and saying like their season, like, yeah, they didn't win and we picked them to win. Like their season was a success. Yep. Like you met the bar that should have been there for the Nuggets. And even the Nuggets internally probably had a lower bar. But the other thing here though, too, is I think we also need to be open to the idea, but I'm about to shut it down and tell you that we shouldn't be. But in theory, we should be open to the idea that, well, you can make a move to get better. Whereas if you're changing out Karl-Anthony Towns for two players who give you, and that's what this team needs, is I'm sure there'll be people in the comments that tell us we're wrong. We've been saying it all year, was the shooting was shaky. And like they need a secondary playmaker to make the decisions that it's not even just that. And I defended Anthony Edwards. Like he made some pretty bad decisions and he's clearly not like the best passer yet, but maybe you called him like he's A- at everything or B+ at passing. That needs to be good enough based off everything else that he does. And so if you can't assemble like a consistently good offense around him with him being the player he is right now, yes, he will get better, but the player he is right now, you should be able to get to a level where your offense doesn't have these peaks and valleys where it's, oh, Ant threw another bad pass, our season's over. Like he can't be your all everything everywhere, where it's really needs to be our best on-ball defender or second best behind Jaden McDaniels. And I know that's the bar for success for him. So you need kind of that playmaker type to organize things aside from a Mike Conley. And you need just, I would say, shooting. And here's the problem. Like, you need more offensive dynamism. That's what you need. The problem by trading Karl-Anthony Towns is twofold. One, he is, for better or worse, your second most dynamic offensive player.
Yep.
So like now you need to get your second most dynamic offensive player back in that deal, but you also need to make sure that player is an upgrade or that the other player coming back is your third most dynamic player. And then who wants Karl-Anthony Towns when that Supermax extension is about to kick in? And I think there were teams, I won't go as far as underrated because the playoff stuff, the fouling, the peaks and valleys on offense is weird. But I mentioned this before. We weren't talking about the Wolves, so I don't even know why I said it. But I said it in this podcast. People did not discount enough how much different, materially different his value is on offense when you shift him from the 5 to the 4. He gives you the ability to do that. That doesn't mean he's still as valuable at the 4. And so I do think a team would give up value for him. But where's the move? Like, what are the players? I had thought about, like, if you were able to get, and it would take a third team, but it's like if you could sub out Karl-Anthony Towns and get like Bogdan Bogdanovic and DeJounte Murray, this team would be, you'd have all sorts of rotation. Like, is Mike Conley coming off the bench then? What are we doing here? But like, why are the Wolves doing that when they have Clint Capella and Onyeka Okongwu and now Karl-Anthony Towns on there? Then Karl-Anthony Towns and Trae Young would be a defensive disaster. If you're also looking to cut costs, though, as part of it, so let's just, and I know you want to say something. I'll wrap it up here. I swear. No. In a vacuum, we should be open to the idea that you can trade Karl-Anthony Towns just because his money's so big. And I think that aside from Ant, I know people will be appealing, like Jaden McDaniels will appeal to people, but I still think that Karl-Anthony Towns to me is the second most intriguing player on this roster. But if you're trying to also cut costs as part of that, you're now dealing with teams that are only going to be sending you draft equity in return. And so now you're getting worse and cheaper. And that's what needs to be inexcusable. So I want to lay the option of, if they find a deal and maybe it's, they're going to trade their draft pick with Karl-Anthony Towns and get somebody. In all likelihood, they should be aiming smaller rather than thinking about busting this up. I just don't, if you're looking to save money, you're invariably just going to get much worse, I think. And that's the big issue.
I think that's right. I think, I would agree just with the general idea of like, not any and every Karl-Anthony Towns trade would like draw the ire that we're talking about of like that you did this to get cheaper. This is ridiculous. Like, because you have Naz Reid and everybody likes to talk about like, you kind of slot Naz Reid in there. You get a lot of Karl-Anthony Towns at like a fraction of the price. It's not that different. So you backfill that and then you do go get another guard and another wing or whatever. And like, maybe you're better bottom line. Like that is a plausible outcome. I do think, and we haven't really talked about this, like the counter to, because I think we're in lockstep on the idea of like, you don't have to do this now. Like it's crazy. Please don't make a knee jerk. But like, because his salary is so big, I think the fact that there are some teams that like could take him into cap space and, send you back someone much cheaper, like that option might go away. Well, probably would go away because of the salary floor rules. Mm-hmm. Like if you wait till the trade deadline, like you might just have fewer options because then you really are having to deal with like more even money and you can't take back any more. Not that you would as a cost cutting, but like the existence of a few teams, like none of these are fits, obviously, other than maybe the Thunder, who I've kind of talked myself into like, I don't hate Cat in the Josh Giddey spot. But like they have cap space. Orlando has cap space. Like, Detroit has cap space. There's all these teams that like trades are just easier with big salaries when you have teams like that can just, we got it. Fine. Well, you want anybody back? You want like a $10 million player back? We can do that. Like that, the options are there with that. That's the only thing that should be like encouraging haste with this decision. And every other factor is just like, we got to chill out and just hope Anthony Edwards gets 5% better and maybe you win a title. Like that's where we are with this team.
And by the way, the other thing you mentioned about like Naz Reid's going to be a free agent after next season. He has a player option. So it's like, he's never going to make as much as Karl-Anthony Towns, but like, he's not going to be super cheap forever. Mm-hmm. So like, how much money are you still saving? $20 million a year, maybe. So when you're looking at like what they could actually do though, because everything's focused on, okay, they should run it back. I do think you have to aim for improvements. They're only going to have minimums to offer if they keep their salary sheet the way it is. I would love to see them. And I don't know if this would be like, you would probably have to guarantee him being your sixth man. And I don't know why he'd leave Philly, but like Kyle Lowry here would make a lot of sense. That's like my ambitious target for them. In terms of more realistic guys, I think someone like a Cameron Payne you could look at. Could you also like, what is Spencer Dinwiddie's market going to be? I'm assuming he'll get more than the minimum, but again, if he's promised X amount of playing time, so like those are like, that's kind of your bet. Like, and those are even aiming high. It would be great, by the way, if the Warriors waive Chris Paul and Chris Paul's like, I'll go to Minnesota. Yeah. Start him. That'd be interesting. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, do you think Kyle Anderson or Morris will be back? I mean, they're just going deeper into the tax, but they could bring them both back.
Well, and also then you have a salary slot to trade in the middle of the year. My guess would be that Kyle Anderson still has more value. So he'd be the one to bring back. And the Monte Morris stuff just didn't work out for them. Right. But that's also, you could bring him back.
I mean, the worry is like, the guys you mentioned are probably better. Even Lowry is like brings more to the table than Morris, but like, that's the type of guy that they're going to be shopping for. You're like, who's like Monte Morris, but isn't Monte Morris? Like you're not going to start. We can't pay you much. You have to be steady. We're not going to get anything great. Like that's just who that guy is or was. I don't know what he is anymore potentially, but like it is. Is there a scenario where Morris is just like actually is the best they can do? You know, I think that's on the table too.
Yeah, well, I mean, because let's just say, and let's be realistic and say, okay, a Dinwiddie who doesn't really help your shooting, but gives you just some additional scoring and playmaking, and Kyle Lowry are sort of off the table. Is DeLon Wright better for you than Monte Morris?
Maybe,
Maybe.
maybe.
Defensively, sure, but that's not the issue for
Yeah,
this team.
you don't need that. Yeah, I
And
mean,
then
probably
it's
not actually, because Wright is just like so low usage. He just gets on the ball and gets off it and doesn't like do a whole lot with it.
so
Morris might be better.
and then it's like when you're getting into, I mean, and also if you would prefer them to shoot, or you're gonna have to go out and get a separate shooter type
Mhm.
deal. I don't know. Like, I think if they do anything, it feels like it's gonna have to happen via trade. And now you're in a situation where it needs to be a dollar for dollar match and you can't aggregate salaries. And so your best, or rather, I would say your player who's going to be most expensive that you're likely, because you're not going to trade Gobert. Let's assume that you're not just going to trade Cat. Conley, I don't know why you would trade. Anthony Edwards is not going to be traded. So then it's okay. Well, Naz Reid is making 14 million. Like, what would it take for you to actually think about parting with Naz Reid? And if the answer is, well, like, it just doesn't make, we want to have that button to push if we do decide to move Cat in the middle of the season. But by the way, that's going to be tough because when teams don't have cap space in the middle of the season, how do you square those deals? Just become tougher to square away. And then it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker, whose salary is actually declining from this season to next at 4.3 million. You're not going to trade Jaden McDaniels at 22.6, at least I don't think. And so even someone like a Javon Carter would make a lot of sense for this team. You can't get him
Yeah.
unless you're going to give up Naz Reid, basically, just because of the way the salary matching is working there. So they're in a really weird spot. I think it'll be easier for them. This was my roundabout way of saying, to add shooting to the rotation, where it's like, could we get someone I like for them? And he was playing in Atlanta and looked pretty good. And he's looked good when he was playing in Washington. Garrison Matthews.
Mm-hmm.
Get someone just come in, he'll chuck threes, and sometimes he'll get going downhill. If you wanted to go super nuclear, it's just like if you put a first round pick on the table, would the Thunder give you Isaiah Joe?
I mean, that'd be phenomenal if they would, if you're Minnesota.
Probably not, because you're helping out. They already did this. They helped out Dallas. It's like, we're really going to do this again. So, but like, I guess my point is, I think even talking about the names like Isaiah Joe is really good. So like a Garrison, like I think you could add someone maybe slightly better than Garrison Matthews or Garrison Matthews himself, just as an example. And like your team is like stocked enough to be better next year. And like the other thing too that we can't discount is now you've had this entire season of going through all of this. And it's like you're going to get improvement from Anthony Edwards. Jaden McDaniels should be better. He was better on offense for most of the playoffs. He should be better during the regular season. I know Gobert and Conley are another year older, but I just would caution, and I know fans are not thinking this way, but any media members who think that they need to sort of blow it up or trade, like make a big trade, or even if the Wolves are thinking along these lines, it's the absolute earliest I would even consider it is at the 2025 trade deadline. And that's only because, or if they're like just missing expectations by a galaxy.
Yeah, right. They're healthy and they're like 7th in the West for some reason. It's like, okay, well now
what if they're 7th in the West, but like still 20 games over?
Well, yeah, that's possible. I would say it almost would have more to do with like, well, it's so like if Cat is having a shit season and has been healthy and is just playing terrible, but then like how are you trading that guy? That makes it even harder if you wait till the deadline, and that's the situation you're in. Yeah, we're team. What should we call our team for? Like team patience? That's not catchy enough. Team don't do anything stupid until the trade deadline.
And again, it's just like I would feel at least 5% better about about their offense next season if they added Cameron Payne. And I'd probably feel like 20% better about their offense if they added Garrison Matthews, not gonna lie. So like the fact that I'm saying that might be hyperbolic, but it's like if that's what the bar here is, well, could there even just be, we saw it last year with Kelly Oubre Jr. just signing for the minimum in Philly. Just like something like that, where it's like his knees are cooked, the Grizzlies waive him, and Luke Kennard is just available.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And also, like, I know we're never gonna get out of this, but like they beat the Nuggets. Like this team beat Denver. Like
per a bunch of our YouTube comments, they weren't the better team. The Nuggets lost that series. The Timberwolves didn't. I fucking hate that logic. Maybe next year the Nuggets prove they were the better team. The Timberwolves were the better team in that series. Do you know how I know that? They won it.
Yeah,
that's how I know that.
Another one. No, yeah. So like that I think hanging over all of it is like this team is really good, like stupid good. Like, and maybe Dallas is the only team in the West they couldn't have beaten. Like the fact that you could beat Denver, and Denver was everyone's juggernaut. It was our no notes juggernaut. Like they beat them. So if you go into next season knowing that you can do that, you got to feel pretty good just running it back, like, or pretty close to it. There's just you didn't. There's only one team we're pretty sure that Minnesota can't beat, and like who knows how that looks next year. I think that knowledge should really like forestall any major changes for them.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Very, very, very quickly. The Pistons, we've already talked about Trajan Langdon now being their lead basketball decision maker. I actually like that hire. Troy Weaver is gone. He probably didn't want to stay on in the scouting role. Who knew? And Monty Williams' future is being deliberated.
Oh.
That is, I still think Monty Williams put that out there. I'm not gonna lie. We already asked this question on the last podcast, but do you just seeing that trickle out, knowing Troy Weaver's already gone? Do you think that Monty Williams is still coaching this team by the start of 2025-26 season?
Oh, so in this hypothetical, he's coaching it this coming season, but not beyond it.
Well, if you say no, not beyond it, I'm going to ask you: does he finish out this season? Will he be the coach?
I'd really like to avoid a follow-up question. So no, that's I mean, step one's already complete. You already got rid of the guy that hired him. I'm gonna say he is not coaching the Pistons for 25-26. So
does he make it through next year?
Does he make it through next year? I think probably I would have to say no to that, because it's like, why would he, if you like, what would have to happen for him to make it through the entire 24-25 season and then get fired? Like, wouldn't it be more, if it's obvious, why wouldn't you just do it in season? Because it's more disruptive, I guess.
The follow-up to the follow-up is, do you think just because Trajan Langdon has been given, this is per multiple reports, the freedom to make whatever decisions he wants, which by the way is a good sign. I also painted the Monty Williams hire as a good sign, but like now we found out that like Tom Gores was basically just driving that bus and Troy Weaver didn't actually want him all that much. So that was probably a red flag. Do you think the Pistons are not, everyone's looking at them as the team that's going to do something stupid or a few things that are stupid over the offseason with all their cap space? They're less likely to do something stupid now that they've gone this route, right? Or do you think that they're still going to be this mandate to just be, I know everyone mentions Tobias Harris, but I don't know why it's Tobias Harris, but it's, hey, let's just go max out Gary Trent Jr. or something.
It does seem less likely that they would do something like that, because that's like, you could understand in hindsight why Troy Weaver would have wanted to do that, because he's like thinking, we need to win some games because my job's on the line, and like, what do I got to lose by making some win now moves? Like I might get another year or something out of this. So it checks out to me that Langdon might be someone that, like, I mean, maybe this is the way to frame it. It feels more likely now that you might see someone like Jaden Ivey traded or someone like Jalen Duren traded, just because it's like, these aren't my guys. This hasn't worked. Let's really refresh this. Even Cade Cunningham, like, I don't know, like that's probably the last guy you'd want to move, but like, if you're really starting to clean house, I guess like, if it wouldn't be the first time that a new executive came in and like the prizes from the previous regime just start flying out the door. That's pretty common, right?
I think I agree with everything you said there. And the other coaching news was Mike Inori has apparently interviewed for the Lakers job and has permission he's an Ohio native, to interview for the Cavs job. So that'll be something to monitor too. Yeah. But I'm still penciling in JJ Redick for the Lakers.
I think I am too. Although I haven't seen anything new in the last couple days. But yeah,
I just think it's the finals that like ESPN might have, not that they have the power to threaten the Lakers, but it's probably like, hey, you guys already took away one of our finals broadcasters, and like, you can't do this again just weeks before the finals.
Yeah, I think that's probably,
or maybe JJ himself did it. Like, no, I want to broadcast the finals. And
well, I can imagine it's just like, I got too much to think about. I found myself listening to him on the broadcast thinking like, this guy has not had the time to prepare for this game. Like he's doing interview, like not because it's bad, but it's just like, now that's the lens I'm viewing it through. Like, this is not his number one priority right now. Like that kind of thing. Cause he's got to just be, I don't know, like if he was calling around looking for assistants, right? Reportedly, he was trying to see who might want to join his staff. Like that's a lot to be thinking about when you're trying to analyze another set of games.
I do also find it funny that the other is that Darvin Ham is there's been a lot of teams. I think the Warriors are one of them trying to get them on their assistant staff. And he's apparently so exhausted from spending 2 years with the Lakers that he's just like, nah,
He
I'm
did
good.
look tired. He always looked really tired. I mean, that's that job. That job's like the presidency. It just ages the person like five.
I just don't even know why
years.
JJ Redick wants it. Like it feels like if you win, you're not. Maybe you would get credit at this point because but it's just like the credit's going to go to LeBron and probably as it should. But like it's always going to go to. But if you lose, it somehow could be your fault.
I think like if you're a really competitive person and a really driven person, I think both of which he is, and you've ever thought about coaching, and then the fucking Lakers job is on the table, like it's got to be so hard for you to like stay rational about anything because it's like that's like the holy. I mean, what coaching job is more prestigious than than that? So just to have that on the table has got to be like beyond tantalizing for someone like him that's just like, I don't know, just like I said, competitive and like driven, and to get that out in front of you, like that's got to be like irresistible. But I agree, it's like it seems like a not highly he's not set up to succeed. I don't feel like if he takes that job.
Oh, and the other thing, Mike Brown, $8.5 million a year, agreed on the extension. They literally just split the difference. The Kings' competitive offer was $7. Shout out Greg Wissinger for really just shitting all over the organization when they did, saying, why would you, how idiotic do you have to be to think that releasing that, because it very clearly came from them, when you see all these other contracts to coaches being given out, that would be received well. So they split the difference where it always would have ended up.
Yeah.
That was too, you mentioned it on the last one. You said it felt Kangsy, and then I thought you were going a step too far. And I don't think you were. Like it was just
they did get him back, so it's like we can just reel in the Kangsiness like just a little bit. But what you're talking about and what Greg was saying is like, oh, I can smell the Kangs on that one. That's just like
it was also, you frame it as like, yeah, you negotiate. That's what good team, like that's just everything. But it's
not like this though.
No, that's the point. And it's the way that Greg had also framed it was, okay, so you either think that he's right for this because he brought you back to the playoffs, he wins coach of the year, in which case just pony up the extra couple $1 million.
Right.
Or if you don't think he's right, why are you offering to fucking extend him in the first place?
Yeah. Right.
It never
Great
made
point.
sense, like the way that they leaked it. But
he's the guy or he's not. Like, so at some point the money, it's certainly that little amount of money should not matter if he's your guy.
So splitting the difference seems like that's always, and I actually think the way the coaching market is going, like $8.5 million for Mike Brown, sign me up.
Yep. That's totally reasonable.
We are on to guess a player. And I believe that we each have some for each other. So maybe let's get through, like, we'll see how long they take, but maybe 2 or 3 each. Did you want to start us off?
All right. I have one here from Rubik's Gal. And this is a Pride Month special, which I don't feel like is a cheat to give to you because it's in the title of the message with this in it. All right.
You also want to tell me the name really quickly?
I mean, I feel like I might have to, but here we go. Clue number 1. I was named USA Basketball Athlete of the Year while I was still in high school. Got to try one shot.
It's already off. I don't know college. Now I'm supposed to know high school?
Would you like clue 2?
Yeah. How many clues are there?
You're going to have to pay attention to this clue. By the time I took Seattle by storm, I had won a FIBA World Cup while still in college.
Is this a WNBA player? Is this a Seattle Storm? Is that
I feel like I'm obligated to tell you that it is a WNBA player. First ever. And guess a player.
The first ever WNBA player?
Mm-hmm. Yep. first ever WNBA player that's been the subject of a guess a player on this podcast. I don't think this person was the first WNBA player of all time.
You know it?
I don't know a lot, but I'm pretty sure not.
Oh, man. All right, keep going.
All right, clue 3. I added an Olympic title to my NCAA championship rings.
College is not going to, it wouldn't have helped me if it's the NBA either, to be
I'll
fair.
blow through. So here's clue 4 too. I'm a 3-time Naismith College Player of the Year and a 4-time NCAA champ. 4.
I feel like I should know that one. No.
Okay, 5. As a first overall pick, I didn't disappoint, winning Rookie of the Year, as well as second team honors, plus all defense second team, while destroying the league for the most defensive rebounds in a season. So it's a big. I mean, that's just I assume so.
Nope.
All right, clue 6. I missed an entire season to rehab a torn Achilles. Either side of that lost season, I led my team to the championship, winning Finals MVP both times. What a boss! Basically every accolade possible so far, I think.
Oh my God, this is. I feel like that. You might say the name and it might ring a bell, but I can't even name more than like. I don't even know if I have the knowledge of the Seattle story. Is it? I don't even know if it's a current player or not. I don't know if I have the knowledge of their roster.
Let's see. I don't want to tell you that unless I have to. Okay, I'll go. There's only 3 more. So 7 is my sophomore season in the league was my weakest, with only an all-star nod to show for my troubles. Every other season, I made first team and featured in one of the all-defensive teams. Here you go. Number 8, I became a free agent last year and moved to the East Coast seeking equality and fraternity. That's a hint on the team that this player ended up on, I think.
Still nothing.
All right. Clue 9, Happy Pride. I'm married to Spanish pro basketball player Marta Zargay. That's your last clue. Is that going to do it for you?
No.
It
Shout
is.
out to get the pronunciation right. Shout out to you.
I have no idea if I got the pronunciation right. Xargay. This is Brianna Stewart, aka Stewie. I'm pretty sure is the nickname she goes by. All right.
I should have known that one. I don't know why I can't.
Look, we don't profess to be a WNBA podcast.
You know the name that came to me like actually, but then when you said that it sounded like they were no longer a member of the team, and she's also not a big, was Skylar Diggins Smith. Okay. And I was like, that's the one but I was just like, she wasn't a big, so I wasn't like, I'm not gonna guess that. Like,
it could have been your one-shot kill guess, but yeah, maybe. I don't know if Skylar Diggins was the USA Basketball Athlete of the Year in high school. Probably.
I didn't know Brianna Stewart won 4 NCAA titles. I feel like I should have known that.
That's the one that I was like, I will tell you, I would not have gotten this either. But the 4 NCAA titles, that's, you can finagle like a 5th or 6th year of eligibility in there, but generally speaking, like you're there for 4 years and you just run the table all 4.
Do I use this segment to say who talks about women's sports more than Hardwood Knocks, or is it still Stephen A. Smith talks about? Did you see that? Did you see that clip? Oh, you should go look it up. It's a disaster for Stephen A. Smith. Shout out Monica McNutt. I was actually talking to someone the other day too about, and it's an excuse. It's a cop out. When I was doing some social media consulting, I'd followed the WNBA more, and I really I had like it from afar, and I really wish that I could. I don't know how Nikias and Steve Jones do it, like covering both. Yeah. But I get, after doing 11 months of this nonstop, I get so basketball fit. And again, I don't think that that's necessarily a fair excuse, but I'm also like, I think I'm at least not dumb enough to be like, when you see Caitlin, I always want to say Caitlin Cooper.
I've made that slip multiple times. Yeah.
When you see Caitlin Clark, like there's the hard foul from Kennedy Carter, like you're just not, like the discourse on it was terrible. And I think that it's good that the WNBA is in the spotlight more, but we have a long way to go where it's like the discourse is so bad. And I genuinely do feel bad, but it's probably also just born from laziness. Like I should be trying to be part of to elevate it more. But just in all honesty, if we're speaking candidly on a podcast, doing this because that's what I get paid to do. And like, I'm trying to pay my bills. Like, shallow there. Yeah. It's not, I could be I should talk about it more. I'm not here to hide from it, but it's just, I've made the choice where it's like I'm doing this. It's really a 12 months thing, but like there's 11 months that we go collectively, and you have to, for what Nikias and Steve Jones, I'm just using, there's a bunch of other people do a great job, but just like when you're following it this intimately, basketball for 11 months out of the year, even just as a fan, it gets hard to just like sit down and be like, I want to watch this basketball game, and it's like it's relaxing me. It's like a weird headspace to be in.
I think the way in is like as an actual fan, like first. So like for me, like I haven't sat down and watched an entire WNBA game this season, but I've seen like some, and it's because Caitlin Clark, like my whole family is from Iowa. Like both my parents went to Iowa. Like my mom was a good like state level high school basketball player in Iowa. So she watched every Iowa game while Caitlin Clark was, I almost said Caitlin Cooper again. Well, Caitlin Clark was there. And so like I started getting into it that way. And like, so now I have opinions on like Angel Reese saying things like, she's not the only reason people are watching the WNBA. Like I was in that national championship game. And like now I have an opinion that I don't like Angel Reese because she's like petty and jealous of Caitlin Clark. So like, that's like all fandom, but like I couldn't tell you anything about like what this team does well versus another team, or like give let alone talk about like a cap sheet for a WNBA team. Like I don't have the bandwidth for that. Like I don't have the bandwidth to do that for like sports I followed my whole life, let alone like trying to add new ones at this point.
The discourse on that stuff is pretty bad though, because yes, I do think Caitlin Clark has definitely helped elevate the WNBA profile, but she's not like the genesis of physical competition where it's like, oh, they have it out for Caitlin Clark. It's like, if you've ever watched like seconds of a WNBA game, like it can be physical. And could there be like an undercurrent of that with someone somewhere? Sure, but like to leap right to that feels like lazy.
I don't know. I think see, this is me being a fan, so I don't have to be rational. This is the beauty part of it, is I kind of think there is some, and I understand it. Like there were a lot of good women basketball players before Caitlin Clark. Like, and I can imagine being a player thinking like, why now? Like everyone should be glad that more people are paying attention. Like because of her, frankly, like you can look at all the TV ratings numbers and like, yeah, Caitlin Clark was the driver of like an unseen spike in interest in women's basketball. It's also
been on the climb for like a while. And like even the women's college basketball like that, and Caitlin Clark obviously a part of that, but like Angel Reese was a massive part of that too. And even there was, this is not scientific, but it's not something that frankly where I live that I was used to hearing. I was at the gym around the WNBA draft at one point, and there are these gym bros next to me that were like dissecting the WNBA draft, and they were shocked that so-and-so didn't get drafted higher. And I was like, and it wasn't like a Caitlin Clark thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's layers to this beyond Caitlin Clark. And the clip, you need to look at Stephen A. Smith just putting his foot in his mouth and just he basically said, who talks about the WNBA or women's sports more than First Take, more than Stephen A. Smith? And Monica McNutt rightly said, to be fair, you have the type of platform and power to where you could have been talking about this 3 years ago. And his face, you need to go look at the face react. Was incredible.
I will. I'm always up for that. Okay.
So shout out.
We did WNBA corner here for like 8-9 minutes. That's pretty good.
Basically uninformed opinions though, which is probably the huge part of the problem.
Entirely uninformed.
I have Be Rich. Are you ready to get into the mind of a psychopath?
I'm in it. Let's go.
Clue number 1. I was drafted in the NBA lottery in the mid 90s and finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting. So it's an NBA player.
Got it. Okay, let me totally reframe. Okay, mid 90s, 4th in Rookie of the Year. I have to. You said lottery, mid lottery?
Just I think now you're gonna make me go back.
I don't know what mid lottery means.
It drafted in the lottery.
In the lottery in the mid 90s, and was 4th in Rookie of the Year. Oh, let's go with. Man, why is this so hard? I don't know. Ray Allen.
If they would have given you, it's not Ray Allen, but if he would have given you a year, I get what, like you could take this. Like it's hard when it's just the mid 90s. So
you gotta try. I had to throw one out there.
Clue 2. My sophomore season, I was an all-star averaging 22.4 points and 10.2 rebounds for a team that finished under 500.
22-10, mid 90s lottery pick, rookie of the year. So really just second year was had arrived. Let's see. Antonio McDyess.
No, I like that guess though.
I like that guess too. I thought I might have
it. Clue 3. I played my first 7 seasons for an Eastern Conference team I'm most associated with, starting 97% of games in which I played. During that time, I was a 3-time All-Star, but I only led my team to the playoffs twice.
Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. Mid 90s big guy on an East team that never was all that good. He said 3 All-Star games too?
In the first 7 years, yeah.
Well, okay, let's think. I'm sensing a starting to get a Wizards vibe, but I don't know who that would be. Man, I don't have a guess. I don't know.
Clue 4. I led the NBA in 3-point attempts in 3 consecutive seasons in the early 2000s. Some might say I was Steph Curry before Steph Curry if they had experienced a head injury. Despite peaking at 8 attempted threes per game midway through my career, I was a career 63.3% free throw shooter. This number actually got me.
What the okay, hold on. So this guy averaged over 10 rebounds a game his second year, and then became a super high volume 3-point shooter, like way ahead of when that was a thing.
Correct.
This should be easy. Who is this?
Well, also a poor free throw shooter for his career. That's got to throw you off a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so that's like, oh, on top of everything. And so it was drafted by an East team. I want to say Rashard Lewis, but that's not right. I think he was the Sonics first. Man, what guys are getting a bunch of rebounds and shooting threes in like the early 2000s
in the East?
In the East, Toronto. Now I'm just like thinking of teams, like just naming teams. I feel like I should have it, but I don't want to just sit here silently running through Eastern Conference teams. Antoine Walker.
Oh shit, you got it. Nice job.
There was shooting threes, but has no business shooting threes.
Did you know about how bad he was as a free throw shooter?
I remember that now, but I was trying to think of like he really was getting them up like way before, and he shouldn't have been. He's like the last guy that should have been shooting that many threes. What a time that he was allowed to do that.
The other 3 clues were late in my career. I was part of a 5-team trade involving the Heat, Grizzlies, Celtics, Hornets, and Jazz. This trade was pivotal in getting Greg Ostertag to fulfill his destiny and finish his career with Utah. Other notables involved were Eddie Jones, Rasul Butler, James Posey, and Quintel Woods. The Celtics traded me to the Miami Heat for 2 seasons, and I had to be Pat Riley's least favorite player to coach ever. In fact, in the 2006-2007 season with the Heat, I was a negative win share per 48 player. Second to last clue, Grant, you're going to get it on the next clue, the last clue. I love headbands, and my nicknames was Cybertwan.
Cybertwan, that's right.
That's not a bad nickname. NBA nicknames are totally fucked. They're so bad.
It was a different time. They used to be really good at it.
We used to have principles as a society, and then NBA nicknames went to shit.
All right, so I have 2 from B Rich here. I can give you the hard. I'm going to give you what I think is the easier one. Actually, you know what? No, you deserve the harder one.
Feel fucked up. You just witnessed me go. How many clues did we get for Breonna Stewart? And I couldn't even get her.
I think the harder one's more interesting. I'm still going to give you the harder one. Deal with it.
Your appetite for seeing me fail is a little discouraging.
You're not going to fail. Clue number 1. I was wait, what? I thought this was someone. Oh no, it is. Okay. Clue number 1. I was a first round pick for a Western Conference team in the early 90s, drafted from an SEC school. Those are schools typically in the South, Dan. Colleges.
What is it? What does the SEC stand for?
Southeast Conference.
Oh, that's not something to do with stocks?
It's also the Securities and Exchange Commission, which
I feel like
this person might have had a dalliance with the SEC at one point, but this is referring to his college conference.
So what was the first clue? They're just from an SEC school?
Picked by a West team in the first round pick, Western Conference team in the early 90s.
All right, so it's down to just, it might be fewer than 15 teams at that point, right?
There's probably like 12 teams in the early 90s.
Would you say mid-90s?
Early 90s.
Oh, that changes everything. I don't even have a guess. Steve Francis.
No, it is not Steve Francis. Number 2. This is a great clue. Much to Dan's chagrin, I finished second in most improved player voting in my second season, averaging 21 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 4.7 assists. I haven't done the research, but I'm most likely one of the only players to finish second in most improved, but make first team All NBA in the same season. What? First team
Jamal
All
Mashburn?
NBA.
Where do you go to school?
Kentucky, but is not Jamal Mashburn. That's a good
Is
guess.
Kentucky considered an SEC school? You know, you want my.
I think so. First team All NBA in his second year in the early 90s.
Oh yeah, that's not a. This player better be a good player.
A great player. Clue number 3. After 6 seasons in the Western Conference, I was traded to the East and primarily as a bench contributor helped my team reach the NBA Finals. I also finished 10th in most improved.
So he went from making first team All NBA to 4 or 5 years later coming off the bench.
I didn't remember that. I'm gonna take Bill's word for it that he did come off the bench for this team. I definitely remember him being in the finals, but I couldn't remember that he was coming off the bench for this East team.
And he won a championship.
No, it just says he reached the NBA Finals.
I have no idea.
All right. The following season, I became a starter, averaged 18.6 points per game. My team again made the playoffs, and I earned a 5-year, $62 million contract extension.
No.
Okay. A few seasons later, despite being a 33% career outside shooter, I set an NBA record for most three-point makes without a miss, dropping 38 points on the Clippers in the process.
What year are we even in right now? My mind is so scrambled. No, keep going.
All right. After missing the playoffs a few seasons in a row, I was traded back to the Western Conference, where I started 82 regular season games and my team finished with the number 1 seed. What a career. This guy's just... So I'll try to synthesize where we're at. First round pick in the early 90s is All NBA first team in his second season.
Yeah, that's like, how do I not know that?
Well, I told Bill I think we might have done this guy before, but that's when I remember. I don't know if
Greg
that's
Buckner.
That's what if it was Greg Buckner? I feel like telling you that I specifically remember a lot about this player is also like a clue in itself, but that could be anything. I definitely had multiple posters of this player when I was like in the mid 90s and maybe early 90s. So anyway,
is Santa Clara from the SEC?
This guy, and then it's All NBA, ends up getting traded to an Eastern Conference team where he makes the finals, and then goes back to the Western Conference where he's the starter on the number 1 seed of a Western Conference team.
Jason Richardson?
No, you're too late, but like kind of similar arc, I would say. I think I could give you the clue of when he was on the West team that was a number 1 seed. I want to say that's... Oh, what year is that? Maybe like it's either 01 or 04. I think. You want the last?
Yeah, I don't know who was number 1 in the West in 01 or... I mean, the Lakers were probably one of those years, the 1 seed.
Here's the last clue. During my last season, Ron Artest broke my biggest career record, longest suspension ever handed out by the NBA.
Longest suspension ever handed out by and he had the record. It can't be Sheed because he won a title.
So the fact that the reason for the suspension is not in any of the clues is because the reason for the suspension is like the biggest giveaway for this player that you would get immediately, like what he did to get suspended. It's like the defining thing of his career, I would say.
It's not making first team All NBA.
Nope.
I guess not, because I don't know what the fuck this is.
Let's see. I'm trying to think of a clue I could give you that wouldn't just give it away. I could give you I'll give you the teams. So the team that he was drafted by is the Warriors, for whom he made All NBA. The next team he goes to that makes the finals that he's on in the East is the Knicks. And then the number 1
99 Knicks. This is the last time they made the finals.
Yeah. And then he ends up, I think it's he's back on the Timberwolves when they are the number 1 seed.
Is this Sprewell?
It is Sprewell. You are correct.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, none of those clues make me think of Latrell Sprewell.
So now you're never going to forget that he was all NBA first team in his second year.
I didn't know he came off the bench for the Knicks.
I didn't know that either. I think we may have to fact check that aspect of it.
Well, no, he said it was only for the first season, right?
Yeah. Well, who's starting? Is it because Allen Houston's there still? Is he can't get in there over Allen Houston?
So yeah, he came off the bench for them the first season. He only started 4 games. He only made 37 appearances, but then he started for them thereafter.
Oh,
I have a fun that won't blow up a spot. I have a fun little Latrell Sprewell story for you off air.
Oh wow. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, so like you couldn't put the choking the coach in the clues because you're just like, well, that's everybody's gonna know.
Like, oh, I'm definitely, you could tell me I'm not gonna know, but it's like, oh yeah, that would have been it.
Yeah, that's I mean, would you agree that is like that's in the first paragraph of his like Wikipedia?
The clue threw me off because I would have tried to think of a player who was way better than Latrell Sprewell about the second team All NBA. I never would have first team All NBA, excuse me. That I never would have been able to get off that.
Yeah, no, that's like because I want to go look now. I forget what year that had to have been because I think he's drafted in the 90 because I think Weber's 91. And then so Sprewell's the year after that. So he makes it in 93, 94, which I think was when Jordan is playing baseball, right? That's one of the years he's gone. And so that's how he gets on first team. That's got to be how that worked. Because otherwise, like Jordan just is first team every year.
I just find it funny. So he makes all defensive team his second season, then never makes another offensive team for the rest of his career or another All NBA team.
Yeah. Are you looking at his numbers right now?
Yeah.
So what did Sprewell? I was talking to Bill about
11th in MVP voting as a sophomore.
Did he? What I was thinking, like, I bet he shot like 42% from the field for his career. What is his career field goal percentage?
42.5%.
I know Spree. He was like, he would not be highly regarded today. I don't feel like because he was really inefficient and just like didn't. I don't know who I would compare him to.
I feel like he had like a pretty looking jump shot though. Like
he was super athletic too, and like really could guard when he was younger and cared. He was an awesome dunker too. He was a good in-game dunker because he would always like cock it all the way back with 2 hands behind the head. Like that was his signature dunk.
Can you guess how many seasons did he shoot at least 50% inside the arc?
Inside the arc? I mean,
on 2s.
I mean, probably like what? 1, 2,
0.
And what was he career 3-point shooter? He was like
33.7. His highest shooting percentage from 2 was 48.8% as a rookie with the Warriors.
Right. When he's like on a super restrictive, probably shot diet.
Well, no, 10 2-pointers per game.
Wow.
15.4 points as a rookie.
And that's 92, 93 is the rookie year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who else was on the team. I can't remember.
Also, I guess he couldn't put the clue about him turning down a $40 million contract because of or $10 million a year contracts. He needed to feed his family.
Got to feed his family. Also the Dada like rim like spinner, the Sprewell spinners. Like I mean that the spinning rims that got put on a shoe after a while. That was a thing.
Oh yeah,
that'd be a notable
I remember those.
Fact.
So we have more in the bank, but let's go to a different person. Rubik's Gal gave us one. We'll do that at another time. Let's go back to Big Mike.
Okay.
Clue number 1. Though my legal first name is Tavares, no one has ever called me that in my 30 years around the NBA.
Tavares?
Yeah.
That rings a weird bell.
This would be a one-shot kill moment for you.
Oh, Tavares. God damn it. I do know this. Just not coming to my brain. Is it Tarvaris? Like Tarvaris?
Tavares.
Javaris Crittenton's long lost twin brother, Tavares.
That is correct. Nice job.
Yeah, he's his actual name's Tavares. He just goes by Javaris. That's just because. No, all right. I don't have a one-shot kill. I thought I did. I don't.
Clue number 2. As a player, I was drafted by the Knicks 24th overall in 1994. I played with the Knicks for 2 years, being little more than a bench warmer. I then played for the first ever Spurs team to be coached by Greg Popovich in 1996. I was a Spur for 3 years, having my career year in 96, 97.
Okay. Knicks to Spurs. 96, 97 is his best year. So who was good on the Spurs in 96, 97? Not Tim Duncan. He's not there yet. Those teams. Well, I guess they would have been good except for the 1 year. Who goes from the Knicks to the Spurs? God, that's tough. I don't have a guess.
Clue 3. After a 1-game pit stop in Denver in 98-99, I played 225 games with the Magic over 3 seasons, including all 82 in 2000-2001, making the playoffs in 2 of those seasons.
Knicks, Spurs, Magic. So now we're like late 90s on the Magic into the early 2000s. How did you say how many years it was with Orlando?
Yeah, 3 seasons, including all 82 games in 2000-2001.
Knicks, Spurs, Magic. Should I know this? Would you? I know it's hard to
This
judge.
is definitely something. Well, I think you'll get it, but I don't know. This isn't someone that is necessarily. I can't do that without giving away clue number 5.
All right. I don't know. I want to say like Bo Outlaw, but his name is Charles, so that's not who it is.
Clue 4. I played my last NBA season in 2002-2003 with the Sixers, retiring at the end of the year, citing chronic knee issues.
Well, everybody that retired at that time had chronic knee issues. Sixers. Man. Knicks, Spurs, Magic, Sixers. I don't know.
Clue 5. In 2005, I got my first NBA coaching job, joining Nate McMillan's staff with the Blazers. So he retires in 2003 and is on a coaching staff by 2005.
Man, okay. I'm so hung up on Tavares. I don't know. I don't know if I should be. Fuck. Knicks, Spurs, Magic, Sixers. And then as a coach, like right away with McMillan. I don't know. I don't know who I can't name Nate McMillan's assistant coaching staff in 2005. I don't have it.
Clue 6.
Yeah.
Clue 6. In 2010, I got my first head coaching gig with Team X, the team I'm most associated with having coached.
Jesus, 2010 head coach now. I feel like I should have this.
I guarantee you'll get it before we're out of clues. If that's a consolation.
Okay. Do we have a lot of clues left? Is that what you're saying?
There's 10 total clues, and I just gave you clue 6, so there's 4.
I mean, there can't be that many coaches that went right from whose playing careers are really memorable. Head coach. Tyrone Corbin.
No.
Oh man, I felt pretty good about that.
Clue 7. I was let go by Team X in 2015, but signed on to be the top assistant in Oklahoma City.
Okay. Oh man. So he coached that Team X for like 5 years, and then ends up in OKC on that would have been Scott Brooks's staff, I think. Oh, I should have this. I don't know. I don't have it. I'm not going to belabor it.
Clue 8. I would join Brett Brown's staff in Philadelphia in 2018 after Lloyd Pierce took the Hawks job.
Who is this?
You'll get it on the next clue.
All right, give me the next one. I'm annoyed.
Clue 9. In May of 2019, I became head coach of the Phoenix Suns.
Is this Monty Williams?
Yes. I thought you were like going to say, I don't know.
I did have just a brief moment where I'm blanked and I was like, who used to coach the Suns? Because we just talked about him.
The final clue was after 4 seasons in Phoenix, including 2 Coaches Association Coach of the Year awards. I was let go. I wanted to spend time with my family, but the Pistons offered me 13 Brinks trucks filled with money. Who could possibly say no? What do you mean I have to actually coach these kids? Damn it. They just had their worst season in history. Now people think I'm a terrible coach.
I appreciate Mike throwing in the like, here you go, dummy, like final clue, where it's just there's no one that's not going to get it.
You need it, so you're not a dummy.
Yeah, no, I need it. So, okay, so now in looking back, the Knicks, yeah, okay, Knicks, Spurs, Matt, yeah, all right, all right, that's right. It is Monty Williams. like I'm like verifying it in my own brain. Oh man.
Would you like to take us out of here now that we did our quick podcast in 100 minutes?
Yep, we'll be much quicker next time. We always promise and never deliver. Thanks everybody for listening, especially for contributing. All the guest players, much appreciated. If you have not already done so, please, wherever you get your podcasts, give us high ratings, 5 stars, subscribe. If you haven't done that, I don't know how you're listening to this. If you just randomly decided to pick this podcast today, thanks. Subscribe anyway. Tell your friends you found this, you randomly decided to listen to a podcast and you subscribed, and they should too. Join our Discord. Check out our merch. Links for both of those things are in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. I think that will cover it for now. Shouts Frank Ntilikina. Apologies, Jarrett Allen.